So I know that a big thing that you talk about is people who have thyroid issues. Oftentimes they get immediately treated with medication, but you talk about how so much of thyroid issues can be repaired or completely eliminated by lifestyle and by diet in particular. I mean, your book is called The Thyroid Reset Diet. So talk to us a little bit about what that looks like, I guess, from both extents. If you have hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, and then like, is it the same? Is it opposite for those people? Talk to us a little bit about what that kind of like thyroid reset diet actually looks like.
For sure, yeah. So the circumstance is that I mentioned how thyroid meds are the most widely prescribed meds. In the irrefutable medical literature, there's been strong position papers saying that somewhere around 85 to 90% of people on these medications have no business being on these medications. There's something off with their thyroid, yes. And we often assume that if a hormone in the body does X, like a thyroid hormone helps us regulate our body weight, it's tempting to assume that therefore, if we were to ingest thyroid hormone from outside the body, we would get the same effect. And the one doesn't follow the other. I think about hormones like the depth of the ocean. There's so much going on behind the scenes. We can read blood hormone levels. We know that this hormone has this role, but there's some things that we know about that we can't really measure clinically, like the way that genes interact with hormones, the way that hormone receptors can change, the way that cell permeability can change. So those are the known unknowns. And if we're thinking about the ocean, the blood levels might be the first inch, and these known unknowns might be a few more feet. But there's thousands of feet of unknown unknowns. So yeah, so taking a pill, even if the pill has the exact same thing the body makes, it's not the same as the body making it, right? And
Mm.
that's where the problem comes in. So people have abnormal thyroid levels. And I got to say, if their levels are in where they are in just a few percent of thyroid patients, to where they just quit, there's like nothing coming out, say their thyroid was removed. Yeah, the meds are life-saving. They need that. But for so many other people, the problem isn't that something is missing. The problem is the body's not regulating it right, that there's an inflammatory response. And so when you throw meds on top of that, there may be some benefit here and there, but there's tons of risks associated with that. Now, that's the condition of the meds. Simultaneously, there have been now some big studies saying that simple dietary change has a chance of fully reversing this for the majority of people. Per this category and per the severity, that might be 60 or 70% of people can fully reverse this in a few months by dietary change.
Wow. And so what do those dietary changes need to look like depending on obviously which kind of end of the spectrum you're on?
Yeah, so what inspired this work was studies on short-term uses of extreme low iodine diets. And those are done for a few months at a time. Now, many people take a little longer to get full benefit. So I took that layer, but I also added in a lot of other things known about the things that optimize thyroid function, things that are good for health longer term, like the balance of your macronutrients, your protein, fat, carb ratios. If those things are way off in some way, your body may be overfueled, but still thinking that it's starving. And that can screw up things for the thyroid. There's also a lot of key essential micronutrients that we need to get, not just to regulate. Things like selenium or iron or zinc or vitamin A. So I wanted a diet rich in those. And lastly, there's so many really cool phytonutrients that help our body's immune system, our detox pathways, and do useful things to benefit thyroid function. So the thyroid reset diet, it dials in iodine pretty painlessly, but then it makes sure that you've got a nice balance of macros for general health and good thyroid function. And then you've got all the other critical things that make it all work better.
If you wouldn't mind giving us a few of those examples, the selenium, vitamin A, what were some of those micronutrients that you said were pretty critical?
Yeah, iron, zinc, those are the top few. Yeah,
Okay.
ultimately, every part of your body needs everything, but those are ones that are most central and also ones that are commonly low in the populations at question.
So those are micronutrients are obviously found in specific foods, but also a lot of micronutrients are things that people can take as supplements now. And you mentioned before how if you get like injected with thyroid hormone, like naturally you think like, oh, this is going to work because you're deficient in that. Now you're getting a hormone, but it's not the same as you actually getting it some other way and kind of going back to the root of the cause. Is that similar to these types of supplements? Like, is it more beneficial to get these micronutrients from food itself than it is from like a zinc supplement per se?
It's a funny thing. I'm glad you asked that one. Over the years, my views have evolved a lot on this. And I don't know, there's a lot of evidence for both being relevant, and it's very specific to which nutrient we're talking about. So in the case of selenium, for example, there's evidence that some studies on selenium being of benefit only show benefit in populations that are low in selenium going into it. Others show benefits to dietary intake, and some show benefits of supplemental intake independent of one's selenium status. To a point, you can't take too much. So sometimes micronutrients are simply making up for deficiency. Sometimes they're kind of like gentle medications that work in ways onto their own. And having said all that, there's no replacement for a good diet.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Yeah, I think that's good to hear, right? And one of the things that I just preach to everybody when it comes to health is usually it's not a one size fits all approach. Everything requires context, right? It's not like that the supplement is the best way necessarily, or maybe the diet is the best way necessarily. It's like each can maybe work for different individuals. So that's always really important to keep top of mind.